Welcome to the 440, the podcast for musicians and music teachers who want to build creative, sustainable, and impactful careers. I'm your host, Eric Branner. Each week, we sit down with performers, educators, composers, business experts, and entrepreneurs to share stories, strategies, and inspiration for building thriving lives in music. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the 440 podcast. This week, I'm so excited to invite my friend and longtime pal, Steve Treseler, here to the podcast. Steve's a Seattle-based, award-winning saxophonist, composer, and teaching artist. He does awesome workshops all across North America and Europe. He's been called a firebrand of the tenor saxophone by Earshot magazine. I was super excited when I saw him written up in the New York Times, and he's been in Downbeat and on NPR's Jazz Night in America. Steve's also the founder of Infinite Improvisation. He's a Con Selmer performing artist. His newest project is the In Motion Quartet, and his album called The Grind was recently released. Steve is also a purveyor of fine dad jokes, something else we share together. So anyway, I'm so excited to have you here, Steve, and just to kind of jam and chat and get caught up with you. So thank you for being here. How you doing, man?
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on the new show. And yeah, always fun chatting. So it's cool to give people a little window in some of our conversations.
Yeah,
And
so tell me, what's been going on with you? What's been happening?
wow, so it's been, the performance side of my career has been taken off a bunch. I had 6 gigs this week, and I'm doing a bunch of recording at home, scrambling to finish some loose ends. We're going down to LA for my great aunt's 100th birthday, taking a little road trip down and flying back, leaving tomorrow. So that's in the immediate future. But yeah, it's been good things. Good mix of performing, working on my own projects, recording, and teaching. Mix of lessons, workshops, guest artist things, and piecing together the portfolio.
Yeah, and that's why one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on this show is because of all the musicians I know, you seem to piece together this gigging, performing, teaching, composing, writing, traveling, and hobbies. And you seem to always have a smile on your face. And you seem to have really pulled this thing together to where you seem to have built a really phenomenal life for yourself. And I'd love to dive into that a little bit today, kind of that journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think people could really benefit from how do you go from being in music school or making the decision to be a musician to getting to where you are, to where you're happy. You're living a
Hmm.
really great life. You've got this sweet studio, really interesting projects. This year I wanted to mention that you had just recorded with Damien Jurado. That
Hmm.
album is so good, by the way,
Oh,
and they really
thank
let
you.
you rip on it, which made
Yeah,
me so
yeah,
happy when I heard that. Like you just
yeah,
got to
yeah.
tear it up. So I think that must have been an awesome experience for you.
Oh, it's super amazing. He's such a amazing guy. And in the studio, it was an interesting way that he recorded. First project I was on with him was called Motorcycle Madness. He brought together some people. Most of us had not met each other, and we're in the studio. He sent out demos, no charts or anything. Here's the demos, and we got together. And the first day for rehearsal, we played each song 5 times with a 10-minute break in between to rehearse. We just played, took a break, played, and we just kind of all figured out what we were doing. He didn't give that much direction. So for me, figuring out, brought my bass clarinet and saxophone, and he just trusted us to try things out. And then the next day, we're going to track the album. And he came in and said, okay, we've got 7 of them in the can, so we only have a few more left to do. So he kind of tricked us into just like, hey, just try things out and see how it goes. And that's the vibe that he wanted on the record.
And it
And
worked.
and as a sax player, I don't want to be the one that's just like noodling all over this like poignant, very spacious, poetry that he has. But there are times where, he told me he's actually a fan of late Coltrane. So there's times where he just wants me to go for it on some of these things where it was against my instincts at first, but then listening to how it's all pieced together, it's super cool. Yeah.
Super cool. And the record's great. We're going to make sure to put that in the link too. So people, when
Yeah.
they listen, they can check
He
that
like
out.
that one was a read. We did the one live and then he redid some of the tracks. So that one you're listening to Ralph A. Hughes from Motorcycle Madness 25. And I
Yep.
played on another one called Des Moines. It's a couple of my favorites that I played on, but there's been a bunch. So I've been collaborating with some singer-songwriters because that's music I love listening to, and there's not always a place for a jazz person to be on these. But and then with some of his collaborators, working on like tracking woodwind chorales at home and going into the studio, and it's just music I've just always really enjoyed, and it's just a passion to do that, and it's
And-
cool that
yeah. And let's work that backwards just a
sure.
little bit. So here you are, you got this great gig. How did that come to be? How did that happen for you?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, do you want to kind of trace this back how I went from a kid in school who liked playing in bands to making a career out of it.
I think
But
so.
this story also is an example of how I think about the like all the interdependent connections we have with people. And what sometimes people talk about networking, like you're just schmoozing with people and try to get a gig or something, but it's really just
Mhm.
making some, forging some genuine relationships with people with rooted in mutual respect. One of my first teaching gigs, I was out of school. I went to New England Conservatory, studied jazz saxophone for my undergrad right out of school. But I had some of my first gigs, like when I was, trying to move out of my mom's house, doing some teaching support staff through schools, like paraprofessional work and doing some lessons. I was at this private school helping out the beginning band, little fourth graders playing clarinet, getting them to blow into the right end. Then if I met the percussion coach there, who's now a good friend of mine, Lacey Brown. She was helping the little kids play percussion. And at some point, she's also a singer-songwriter, like gave me a demo. I'm like, oh, this is super cool. And really enjoyed her music. And we just stayed in touch and we've played on each other's projects on and off throughout the years. Uh, and at some point, she had connected with Damien and was helping. They're starting a recording company together, so they're very tight and collaborate on all kinds of things. And they were in the studio for that. I'm like, oh, this could really use a saxophone player. And Lacey said, oh, I know somebody. And then they just called me, said, can you come to the studio tomorrow to record with Damien? We've got the whole band together. And because I have the flexibility to just clear my day, thanks to your software fonts, I can just say,
Oh,
cancel
bless
the
you.
day of lessons. I don't like to do that many last minute cancellations, but when it's something like that, I take the opportunity. And
Well,
then playing with Damien worked, and then there's another member of his band, Aura, who's an amazing songwriter as well. I've just been recording stuff for her projects too, so it's just a good way of connections with people turning into more.
and this is going to be a recurring theme, I think, of this episode. And I
Hmm.
was you said the two things, I've observed over the years, you always show up to stuff. And it
Hmm.
sounds like when you got out of school, you're like, I'll show up and help this band director teach this
Hmm.
class with saxophone. You still do that. And you speak a lot about, for instance, your funnel to get students, which I think we should talk about today, which you've always just reached out to band directors and be like, how
Hmm.
can I help? In our community, when someone asks a question in the Fonz family and says, hey, I'm having this issue, you're usually the first person that says, oh, this is what I do. This is why I like packages. This is why I do this.
Hmm.
And it seems like you have a flywheel built of, and I think because where I'm going is a bigger picture I'm trying to sneak us into, which is
Sure.
I have this new feeling that, and I'm really feeling strongly about it, is that everything you read is don't study arts, don't study
Oh,
poetry, don't study writing. For God's sakes, don't study music. It's blah, blah, blah. Go to get a finance degree or whatever. And really feel strongly that the people who are creatives and artists, what really sprung this on me is I spent some time with a startup founder, super tech fella,
hmm,
who's feeling the same way. They're like, yeah, a lot of jobs are going to get automated, but the super creatives and the humans, which is you, this is going to be a really developing field in the coming years
hmm,
as people use their minds less, as they use their creative space less. So what I'm looking at today as I was thinking about talking to you, as I was writing down this idea of you had mentioned lifestyle, of this blueprint of which is, well, do something that you really like, that you think's interesting, show up for things, right? Which you always do. You just show
hmm,
up and do stuff. Be helpful when you can. And you've created, I call it, it's a flywheel where
hmm.
students show up for you. You're busy. The weirdest gigs show up for you. Like you're in
Yeah.
Europe playing for cows in some field somewhere. We got to talk about that too. So I picked Damien Gerardo as a moment because I knew that was something recent
Hmm.
and really exciting. And I wanted to visit that journey. And you had mentioned, was it Lacey that
Yeah.
that
We
was,
can,
and that was when you just got out of school, right? From the new,
yeah, I was like 21 and looking for
wow.
some crumbs. Yeah, I wasn't like, even when I was out of school, I wasn't super ambitious that I was going to be looking to be some huge famous performer. But turned out my grandfather was the same way, who was he was a doctor, but he didn't want to work for someone else. I didn't really realize this. He really just always did his own thing. He was kind of unemployable by choice. And I just kind of wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want a traditional employment, like music or otherwise, just being able to piece together a full-time income doing my own thing. And I grew up near Seattle and I moved back to this area because I know there's just a lot of really well-funded and supported music programs, and I had some connections there already. And there's just lots of programs that are doing well, and it's just a good environment for folks that are looking for lessons. And I mean, that's a huge thing for a private studio. I think having a location where there's demand for what you're offering, like I couldn't set up what I'm doing now in a lot like most other areas probably. And this is a high cost of living here, so there's challenges, but the model's going to have to be different if you're not in an area necessarily with this much support and affluent people who want lessons for their kids and all of that. So it's
which is something we talk about all the
yeah.
time. It's a recurring theme too. But
So
you're
when people are
right.
talking about rates or whatever, it's just there's just so many variables. And I think I strayed off from
No,
your
you
question.
didn't.
Yeah.
No, and that's the real point of this is I would love to just for you to share your insights to how you got to this really great place because I don't think it's rocket science. And I think it's actually fun. And I think it's actually something that's recreatable that
Yeah.
people could come at school and be like, for me, when I graduated, I thought, oh, I'll probably win the GFA, this
Mm.
big guitar competition, which I didn't. I'll be a famous classical guitar player. And if not, like Guns N' Roses will hire me, something like that. And instead, and I was grinding that out, and I did have these kind of expectations,
Mhm.
and I tripped into teaching as a way to pay the bills and taking any gig I could get. But I think a lot of people lose faith before they've really tried. It's just like anything else, that's how they say most 90% of podcasts never have more than 5 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
Or any kind of career and music, especially because there's so much downforce saying that it's not going to work. Where in reality, it can be really compelling and interesting. And the big piece is being willing to be human and network with people, which is your jam. And I think maybe that's a really cool moment to switch into. If you were talking to somebody who is a jazz musician, they're
Hmm.
in a geography somewhat like where you are or some even different, that's not as important.
Hmm.
But what would be your advice to somebody coming out of school with that youthful energy? They're really trained and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm either going to get a job at Starbucks or I'm going to figure out how to put together a combination of gigs and teaching. Teaching's great because it's
Hmm.
recurring. What would be your advice to like a young jazz musician who's getting started? First steps.
Yeah. So it's a lot. On the performance side, it's very much it's about part of it's just being out on the scene. Jazz is very social music. I was living in my parents' house and we were up in, I don't know, it's maybe 40 minutes from downtown, but I found somewhere to sit in or somewhere to play like every night of the week. So I was always just driving down and listening to music and going to play and just meeting people and getting involved. And also, it's tough if you're just kind of waiting for the phone to ring. Like, why isn't so and so calling me? You know, I'm this skilled, I'm not getting called. It's very much about you want to be making phones ring, like initiating projects. It might be putting together your own group or your own concert series, like really initiating something and being a integral part of the community. It's a different thing where you're just good at doing it and waiting for someone to call you and plug you into something, but really build community and make something happen in the scene while following, you know, what you're interested and passionate about and keeping the elements of your music, yeah, that you're excited about. And this can lead into other elements of the business side of things, making things that sidestep competition, and could talk about that in a moment. On the teaching side, for me, it's finding, yeah, if there's an area where there's a demand for coaches in schools. And I mean, one of my first jobs was a summer music school for a school district. It was like 3 weeks, went in every day, and the pay was abysmal. It was a lot of time for not that much compensation. But I stumbled into something that ended up being a super good strategy. As I was there with a bunch of the local band directors, and we were team teaching things, or I was running my own classes. They saw me show up every day and how I interacted with the kids and how I worked and what we ended up doing for the final concert. So they actually saw me in action and like interacting with the kids and teaching and seeing the results. And I still continue to even get some referrals from those folks. It's
Really?
not just dropping off my resume, it's actually working with them and building that trust. And
So that
and
opportunity was
yeah.
almost like you could see that almost like it was a internship. You were getting
Hmm.
paid something, but not really enough. But by doing that and crushing it, it became a great funnel for people
Hmm.
finding you and thinking of you first.
Yeah. absolutely. And then following up with these folks again as a horn player, a lot of my referrals come directly from band directors because if someone is looking for music lessons, they're not going to, at least in my world, go on next door and poke around for a teacher. Usually
No.
they'll ask their band director or another kid who sounds good. You know, once I have one student who's really strong in a leader, it's not all of them, but one of those can turn into, oh, who do you take lessons with? So that's where if you're in one area, the word of mouth thing is still super potent. I mean, I got set up when there wasn't social media in the, early 2000s. Any of the things I do on social and online, it's not for my private studio. That's just still old school connections. I go to concerts by some of these programs where I've worked with a lot of students, or they bring me out for retreats. I go to their concerts and I'm around. Uh, and then when I have a recital, if I do have some openings, I'm not going to be like, oh, hey, do you have any lessons? I need some more students. I'll do something like take a video from our recital where everyone's playing at the end, and I'll just tag all the band directors whose kids are in it. Like, hey, check out what we're doing. So people see.
You're
And then
wait,
sometimes
to make
people,
sure that's clear, you're saying you're recording your recital with
yeah,
all these kids jamming
uh-huh.
that are awesome. We should put that in the links too. And then you tag the band directors on social when you share it with their students.
Well, and I
That's
invite
really
them
cool.
to it. They don't usually show up, but yeah, I tag them. And there was someone in the group saying, "Oh, I'm having a hard time at the end of year. I can't, none of these band directors are emailing me back. What do I do? What do I do?" It's like just go to another concert. If it's someone that just or even if you don't, go and introduce yourself. And I did that the next day. Some of my students were graduating, and the Roosevelt High School Jazz Band was playing up the street. And I went, and the director, I was talking to them, was like, "Oh, does so and so take lessons with you?" No. "Oh, he really should. I'll talk to him." It was like this. It was the
Oh,
same day when I said, "It's just I'm
that's a fun one.
around." And it's hard when you're just getting going, when you kind of are desperate for work. But the moment you like come off as being desperate, like the stink of death,
You're right.
it's
It's
like
a
someone who just seems like really desperate to get a date or something, and it's just not usually conducive to
yeah. Well, and I was going
to
to ask you because everything you're describing involves fearlessly showing up. And
hmm
I can say that I talk to a lot of
mm,
musicians and music teachers just through the work that I do. And it's not a lethargy. It's not like
mm,
there is maybe an imposter syndrome of showing up,
mm,
right? Like maybe what am I doing here? What do I belong here? And I think that creates a lot of enough friction that a lot of people don't make the first step. And I mean,
yeah.
I like talented people who are purposeful and who are know what they're doing, but they get overwhelmed with just this idea of showing up. So it sounds like for you, I guess my question would be, did you ever feel any hesitancy or was it just you just plowed right into it? Because that sounds like that was your secret, was just being everywhere, being
Yeah.
helpful, being the face, taking a gig, even if it didn't pay you enough, and then seeing that turn into this really awesome flywheel for you.
Mm. Yeah, and you can't manufacture enthusiasm really. So finding the elements that you're actually enthusiastic about, which for me is teaching improvisation and helping.
Huh.
If it's just like kind of like, oh, I need, and there's been times too, I've been super burnt out, or I'm like, oh, I got all these students that don't want to be here. And there's an inflection point in my career too that I want to talk about that really helped amplify it to where it is now. So it's being around. I mean, jazz is social music, and for those of people that are like being an independent business person, there is something about being out there, making things happen, meeting people. And if that's not, for me, that part of the business is exciting. Part that I have like resistance for. It's still like, oh, the accounting or taxes. I'm like, it's just like going through mud trying to get that done. And that's a sign for me that I shouldn't be an accountant or I shouldn't do music business. If I'm forced to read something I don't care about, it's gonna be an ADHD thing too, but I just can't get through it. I just like all resistance. So in no way would I want to center my whole career and calling around those things that I'm not into. So for some people, if it still feels like you're just going through the mud to go out and talk to people or make something happen, then a career path that might have more traditional structure might be a better path because I think it takes that
Yeah.
kind of to be independent and running your own thing like a micro entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
I
You are
really
a
did.
You're an entrepreneur. You are a
Yeah.
business owner.
So I dig that
Yeah.
part of it. But if you're super shy, and there's ways to get over it. So I'm not saying you either have it or you don't, but you can learn that as a skill to be more social, to get out there, to make connections with people. But if that's one of those things that is provides lots and lots of friction. I mean, yeah, we all get imposter syndrome or a little bit nervous or uncomfortable, like we have to deal with that. But if it's really an area that's never been your forte and you'd rather just kind of hide and do your, do your work out of sight, or then this might not be the ideal path for you.
Yeah, you know what? It's a differentiator for
Yeah.
sure, is either being willing to address the anxiety of going out and making yourself known, because it is hard at first, or, and really believing in yourself and being confident
Hmm.
and saying hi to people that you might not be comfortable with, or knowing when this is just not something I should be doing. This is not for me. This does not make me happy. I want to go work somewhere else,
Yeah. And
because it's
could
not for
still be
everybody.
it could still be the hobby. I've got plenty of hobbies that I have no interest in,
You
like,
do have
like,
plenty of hobbies.
monetizing, whatever. I like going skiing, and it's like, well, I'm not meeting people. I'm not working my way up. I'm not meeting the people who are, booking this, or who are the high level ski teachers. Like, I don't care about meeting any of that. I'm just going and doing the thing and leaving. I enjoy going to jam sessions and meeting new people and playing. And at the same time, think of myself as an ambivert, because I do like a lot of time working on projects by myself. When I have a day off, often I'll just go out in nature, work on music by myself, that I'm not always needing to be surrounded by people. But there's ways to do it. You don't have to be like a glad handing, backslapping, annoying kind of super extrovert. But I know people that do really well at this and who are overall, a little bit shy, a little bit introverted, but still really get committed to the bit and really enjoy being around other people and are curious about other people. So you don't have to be like one of those Instagram influencer types
No,
that are super annoying. But if you have to be committed to that kind of, to the network and the community and the people you're serving.
sure.
And if you're not wanting to get out there and talk to them, there's certain difficult things we have to push through because we care about the higher purpose. Like I
Mhm.
never really like filming myself playing and watching it. That's always like, I don't want to watch this. Oh, maybe this doesn't sound good, or I look funny, but like I just had to get over it because, like, in this for this career, and yeah, then I'm playing it really small to not do that, and everyone's filming it anyway, so it's had to get over. Yeah, so there's plenty of things that are like
You
they can be really tough, but when you're committed enough, like you have to push through the, like, being committed to push through the hard part because you care enough. And if you don't care enough to push through the hard part, is what I'm getting at, then it's not gonna it's not gonna work.
yeah, because I think a lot of people probably see your videos of your recitals or of you in Hawaii, and they're probably like,
Yeah.
well, how did, and we've kind of addressed how that happens. You just mentioned that you were really excited to talk about. You said it was an inflection point about
Oh yeah.
improvisation. Yeah, what did you want to share about that?
Oh yeah. I had so I went to study jazz saxophone at New England Conservatory, and as I said, most of my friends went to New York or stayed in Boston,
Hmm.
and I came back to Seattle. I always came back during the summers. I just liked it here, and I was in kind of a tough place, like mental health wise. My little pea brain wasn't ready to like go to New York with everyone, but I just knew I could get set up. I had my summer job painting fire hydrants and replacing residential water meters. If you heard about my
Ooh,
fire hydrant job,
I
and
never
putting
knew
tar
that.
on the road. Yeah, I had to work some like 9 hour days in steel toed boots, like shoveling gravel. I'm not usually one's like, you got to build character, but that definitely is like, whoa, some of those guys are still doing it too. So I'm like, I have to
Yeah.
get up tomorrow and do the same thing again for 9 hours. Sometimes you're just so tired on the weekend to do anything. I was like, that's what it's like. This could be, and that's like been my backup plan too. I ran into a guy at the music shop, and he's like, hey, Timmy liked you. You showed up every day. So if you need a job, come on back. Get a good union gig doing a water department maintenance. Anyway, but then I, got enough of a studio going at like a local music store, getting, showing up to jam sessions, finding little places to play, and then going, when I just started my private studio, I wanted to like get in touch with band directors. But what I did is I made just like a little flyer and a business card, and I had it not in an envelope. I drove around to like 50 schools and went to the office and had them put it in their box because I thought emails would get lost if it was like a physical thing in their mailbox. Again,
I
it's
have
like
never heard
2003.
this. You've
Oh,
never told me this story. I
yeah.
didn't know that. That's
So
crazy.
I physically drove to the school, stuck them in all the boxes. And I don't know, 50, 70, a lot of schools. I got one call. It was like from someone I had already known. Said, "Hey, do you want to come talk to my students?" And he kind of, it was like a lead. That was like a connection of someone that I knew. I was kind of a pain in the butt student for him at one of these summer camps, but found me around, and then he kind of gave me an opportunity to teach some lessons at his school. It's like some of his in-house teachers. He likes to get like young, enthusiastic people out of school who don't maybe charge as much as other folks. And
Sure.
but then there was someone, was this legendary band teacher, Bob Nadd at Washington Middle School, this old school New Orleans guy, and he just started handing out my cards. I'd never met him, and so I was getting some students at my house. People were calling me, "Hey, Bob Natt gave me the." He just saw my resume or whatever, and just giving out my number. And then I got some students, and he had some in-house teachers in the school too. And uh, then I just wanted to meet him, so I figured out. I don't know how I did this. I figured out when his prep period was. Maybe I asked a student or something. And then I just went to the office and signed in, just said I just wanted to visit him. So I found him on his prep period, just introduced myself and said, "Hey, I hear you've some, your students are awesome and wanted to know if you'd openings for any more in-house teachers in your school." And he's like, "Yes, just sign up on the door," before the background checks and stuff. So then I just had a spot, and he was sending me some really awesome students. And then
Predators. Yeah.
they were some really great, because people would talk to these legendary band teachers and say, "Who should you take lessons with?" Like this guy. And then you don't have to do any selling or closing. You can bumble the first call and they're just ready to sign up for lessons. Like you don't have to convince anyone at that point. And then that turned into it was just those two, maybe two or three people from like all those business cards. A couple people called me back, and those became really like power referral sources. And then those parents would talk to each other, or they'd send another student. And like my whole studio going from zero to full was based on a couple power referrals. And this first guy I'm telling you about, he's still sending me students 20 years later.
I would
Um,
say that every teacher that's been doing this a long time that I've ever met
mhm.
can take their story back to a couple people or connections that was the impetus for everything.
Yeah.
I can think of a few families that ended up being the trunk of my referral tree from when
Mhm.
I started. And still to this day, students come from that
Yeah.
connection. And so that is an important thing, is that there is I hate to use the word, but there's basically like a hustle phase where you're like really having to work
Oh,
hard
yeah.
to get it going and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to make a killer living doing it. You put out 50 business cards and had two people write back. That's like a
Yeah.
4% conversion. That's
If I'd send like 300 emails, I probably would have gotten zero.
right.
It's like,
Yeah.
or, and then I was in there. So that's how that got started. Then on the performance end, I was going around, again, it's the area I grew up in. So I had some connections, but then I really had starting to get a burn to like put my own project together. And like I had music that I'd composed, and I was going around to hearing people's gigs. I was trying to find the right people. Like I met some at jam sessions. Someone recommended this guitar player who I'd never met, but I like heard one of his gigs. So I kind of had an idea of a group I wanted to put together. And then I ended up like just booking a gig and just hiring a band of people. Some I had met, some not. I just kind of like arranged a band and just like had a guarantee, not a ton, but instead of being like, "Hey, do you want to join a band and we're going to practice for 3 weeks?" I just said, "Hey, can you play this gig?" And some of those turned into. I found that that's been a cool way to develop relationships with awesome and busy musicians. Hire them for something. And then some of these folks are still close friends. That guitar player who I'd never met before, he's like mixed some of my records. I taught his daughter lessons. Dawn
Oh,
Clement, a good friend of mine, she's now a big shot professor in Denver, running the whole Port Townsend Jazz Workshop, and we're like super tight. It like developed into friendships. It doesn't always work out that way, but so that's between those two things, and word spread, and I would then like the phone would start ringing for more things. But yeah, it was literally just like going out, starting a project, trying to meet people, hear people play, and some of those connections with band directors. And that was enough to just get it started so I could do it full time, enough to at least stay afloat and not have to worry about like getting a real job.
shoveling
I
gravel.
mean, I know it's a real job, but when someone says a real job, they mean the kind of
Right.
job I don't want. So I
You
know
mean
it's
a
a real
job that you're not in
profession.
control of, where you're working for somebody else. So
Yes.
when did the Infinite Improvisation
Oh,
project come out?
yeah. So I'll get there. I need to get to my, realizing I need to get to the inflection point, but I was just kind of set up. I was just like going and great. And it was a grind at times. I was teaching in a music store. There's places where I was like paying rent, and it's a lot of gigs. I wouldn't schedule myself breaks, and I was like driving around all over the place. So I was definitely things like, "Oh, you have a pulse and a checkbook? Yeah, let's sign up for lessons." So I'd have, some kids who were there for an hour who didn't want to be there, and that was draining for me as well. And then I was like, maybe I want something with like a little more stability. So I thought doing a full-time college position would be the thing, to be Professor Steve. And I had an opportunity to go to graduate school at University of Washington as a TA for the jazz department. It was a brand new program for jazz studies and improvised music, where I was helping teach jazz history and play in the big band and run some audio for things. And so it covered the whole thing. I was teaching a couple classes and full tuition plus a little stipend and doing that, which was a really cool experience and opportunity. And then had some adjunct college gigs, but yeah, I was a finalist for a position for a director of jazz studies for a place that I up at Western Washington University in Bellingham, which would have been so cool because it's like close enough to town. It's out there in the Bay, and fell in love with the idea of going skiing at Mount Baker, and
Yeah.
a college gig, but somewhere I actually wanted to live, not just in the middle of nowhere. I was a finalist for the gig even before my degree was complete, but yeah, didn't get the position, and was kind of like, oh. And then I was like looking around at other positions, and there were most of them were places I just didn't want to move. It would have been, I was offered one, yeah, come teach out in Baton Rouge. And I'm like, oh, it looks like a good position. I just thought about the mosquitoes or,
It
the
wasn't for
climate.
you.
And yeah, I just couldn't do it. And that's where the publisher of my book had like hit me to some kind of my first introduction to like small business, like entrepreneurship resources. And one was this book called Book Yourself Solid by
Oh, yeah.
Michael Port. And he said, the book looks cheesy, but just do the workbook and read through it. So it's, a guy in a suit, book yourself solid, how to how to get more clients than you can handle, even if you hate
Yeah.
marketing and selling. And it looks so cheesy. I never would have picked up a business book in my life, but someone who I really admired and trust. So I went through it, and it was kind of a creative visioning thing. And you kind of think about who are your ideal clients that light you up, and then who are the ones that maybe don't want to be there. And then yeah, one of his for the first action items was you kind of think about who are the ones that bring you energy and who are the ones that really bring you down, and you like dread your day because you're this interaction maybe with a parent or a student. Great. And the first step, he said, it was dump the duds, which isn't a very gracious way of saying, but part ways with people that just aren't, that are just sucking all your energy. Someone
Yeah.
who's maybe arguing about the schedule every week, or the kid doesn't want to be there and complains and won't take out their instruments. So I'm not the one that says everyone needs to be ideal and perfect. I've had some amazing students that were very challenging and that learning disabilities, or not speaking English well, or who ended up just being amazing students, even though they wouldn't be who you might think is this is the your ideal perfect
Yeah.
student. But then, and it seemed crazy, why would you're looking for more clients, but the idea is then I had some that went on to other teachers and connected with them way better and had a much better experience, so it was better for the kids. But then you bring more enthusiasm, and then some of the students that are more in between and maybe not into it, you have more enthusiasm to bring to everyone else. uh, and with that enthusiasm, you start attracting more of the students that are really a good fit. Then in the workbook, there was one thing in there. The question was, what is a problem you solve in a unique way? And I was like, oh, I do sometimes at that very first music camp I was telling you about. I had an improvisation class with a group of musicians of all different levels, like absolute beginners, didn't know which end of the horn to blow into, to experienced people. And I had to teach an improvisation class. And we took elements I did in college, some soundscape textures, and I also used some like theater games and just doing some group. And the kids had so much fun. It was all theatrical and zany, and they just loved it. And
Were
like
you
words,
making it up in the moment? Were you just going at it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I had pieced it, just like creativity isn't something that falls out of the sky, but I took
Yeah.
something that I had done in a more academic setting, and then I brought it down to the
Yeah.
kids. So no,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was winged. I had a whole lesson plan that I just threw away because
Yeah.
once I saw who was in the room, it was not it. So we did like little theater games and drawing graphic scores and making soundscapes, like, oh, we're gonna play farm, and they all would sound like farm animals. And now we're gonna do corral, or now we're forest and explosion. And they had all these little things they wanted to play at the concert. They were just so stoked about it, and people were talking about that. The band directors would tell other band directors, and then it's like, it was a way that I could teach improvisation. Like when I would get called into a school, hey, teach my students how to solo, and we're going to take turns playing solos. All these nervous students that don't want to be put on the spot. So then I was like, hey, I do these like little funny workshops. I get people to not be afraid of improvising, and then they're all jamming by the end. And I thought like that's a unique thing or a problem I solve in a unique way. And that was like a little light bulb realizing like there's no job for that. Like the job description is like run funny little improvisation games for kids. And then I realized like that's actually the thing. And I really doubled down on that and looked for more ways of like being really serious about making improvisation a community experience, and studying all like the history of all these different approaches that people used, and of all the things I do. I'm finding more in the performance element, more the things that are more unique and attract people. But at that moment, it was that teaching thing. I was offering this unique thing that no one else was doing, and it sidesteps competition, because eventually if someone brings me out, there wasn't anyone else that was doing it, but it also served like a pressing need for people.
That's what grabbed
And
you. And it was
yeah,
that
yeah. And
message
so,
from that book, which is, what did you say? It was solving a
uh,
problem in a unique way.
yeah. And then I have another model from a source that I like recommending even more than that book. But it was this idea that only is better than best. Like when you carve out your own thing. And
Oh,
so I realize it's a model that I still use. Like, what is it that people pay you for, or how do you get more? Well, it's not like how long you were at school or how much you practiced or how valuable this is, and you should feel guilty about paying. It's being able to do something unique that like deeply resonates with some people. That's
it's
that's kind
you.
of that's it. Yeah. So and I put some of this in the notes. Then I was introduced to Seth Godin, who is a thought leader, kind of known as a marketing guy, but it's much more like bigger picture things. And he tells a lot of stories. It's about doing your best work, making a difference, and building businesses around that. Talking about the post-industrial economy. So instead of being a cog in a machine, like working at the GM plant and like getting rich on one income, what can you do um, to really impact other people and build a business around it? He has a podcast now. He has an old podcast called Startup School that was just a bunch of people starting their new projects, and it's just a bunch of talks and starting from the beginning. It's not that long. It's like 10 of them listening through. That was like, yeah, some of the Seth Godin stuff was very much like a kind of a mini awakening or something like, oh, it's
Yeah.
a whole new model of seeing the
Yeah.
world. So freelancer class on Udemy, where he has 5 levels of freelancing. I will send it. We got to hope you're making a list of all this stuff. And I've presented on this, so I have a handout. I adapted a bit. Some of the terms were a little dated, but the like 5 levels of freelancing, like his whole thing is that there's a race to the bottom. There's pressure from automation, competition, outsourcing, as we all know with AI, like pushing things
Yeah.
down, and this race to the top. And he says, unfortunately, like the middle class or like the middle is getting cut out, which
Yeah.
sucks. But how do you get on the race to the top? You need levels for any service professionals for freelance, and the lowest level they call the Uber driver, where you have autonomy over your schedule where you are, but the gig is still coming from the man,
Yeah.
and they can change the terms at any moment or replace you with robots. Some of this can be a good way to get started. You're working for one of these big music schools or programs that um, books all the lessons and uh, takes most of the money, or doing a gig on Fiverr or something where it's like the man is still in charge, but you have some flexibility. Oh, and as Seth says, as you go further up this freelancing ladder, the work gets better and the money gets better. It's like the next level is being called the handyman, like the person who's the most convenient option. I don't know the gender neutral way to say
Yeah.
handyman. Handy
Got
person
you.
isn't quite the same. So
Yeah.
if you got
I
to
got
go,
you.
but yeah, the convenient option, the Chinese food, the restaurant across the street. It's not great, but it's just right there. Or the piano
Yeah.
teacher down the street, or there's only 2 bass players in town and you're one of them. And people can be really busy being like the convenient option, but then
Yes.
you have more pressure from competition and price and all of that. The third level is the craftsperson. If you're known as a teacher or a player that's very well known and respected, then people are willing to drive further or pay more for your services. And usually that's where things top out, at least when people are talking about music business. It's like, yeah, you want to be really good. It's competition out there. You need to be really good and like outwork other people and be the best. So people call you. But there's 2 more levels. So then he has the level that's unique where you're offering uh, you in a category of one. So you're doing something, and it could be your personality or what you're doing, something that you're known for. And then the top level is being remarkable. So, that it's very excellent, but also it's worth making a remark about. So you see it and people are like, wow, look at that. And he uses the analogy of a purple cow. So if you're driving by a field, like no one says anything about a brown cow, but if there's a purple one sitting there, you'd tell the person next to you, you take a picture, you tell your friend, it's like worth making a remark about.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
And so I use that as a model in conjunction with this value pyramid. I'll share like with things that actually transform, like satisfy people's needs and desires, and aligning all of that together. And I use that as a model. So I get called for a gig. Like last night, I got called to play in a big band, and it was super fun. It didn't pay very well. I know that was a level 2, maybe a level 3 gig, like the
Okay.
craftsman. It's okay. And I just know I couldn't be like, hey, you know what? It's gonna be $1,000. And they'll be like, F you, we're getting another tenor
Yeah.
player.
Yeah.
But I really try to, no more level 1 jobs, mostly not like level 2 and going up to like 3, 4, and 5. The higher up it is, then if I'm called to do a guest artist thing where I'm running some of these workshops and performing, I can feel comfortable asking for a much higher rate and to pay for my flight and all of that kind of thing. Because it's a unique thing. If you wanted to call, let's say for the Fawn's convention, you wanted to hire Victor Wooten to be your speaker and featured performer, that'd be
Right.
killer. And then he's like, okay, it's going to cost you, a lot of money. And I hope he does charge a lot. He'd be like, no, forget it. We'll just get another bass player. I'm like, you're not going to get another bass player. Like, that's a category of one. And
A
you don't have to be
category of one.
yeah, you don't have to be world famous to do it. There's people who can just do it in your neighborhood. It could be the server at your favorite restaurant who would be maybe the last one to be around when rounds of layoffs. They keep the indispensable Seth Godin book about being what's it mean to be indispensable? I think that book's called Linchpin. So for a while, I really went through that. I haven't been
Yeah.
talking or reading about this stuff for a while, but that was a complete reframing. So it was all the stuff that I was already doing, but I had a much better framework for what I was going to devote my time to and what kind of content I was going to share out in the world.
I would say too that a lot of people, we all go through these phases of really diving into books and being like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
going to add this thing. You built a base and had a thing that was working, and
yeah,
then you applied all these principles to it. You were like, oh, I'm doing level 2 work. This is level 3. I've never heard you talk about that before either, that you actually, when you get a gig, you do apply that matrix to it when you're thinking
hmm
about it. You're like, oh, this is a 5. And that's probably why these gigs pop up for you, like going to Europe or going
hmm
to Hawaii or going to play with Damon Girardo. Really
yeah,
interesting things because you kind of have moved past the ones and the twos that you have to do to get
yeah,
started. And you're moving more into the 3, 4s, and 5s. It's a
yeah.
great concept.
And you kind of have to start down at one or two. You don't have most of the time. It's hard to just drop in. You're not going to necessarily become the artistic director of a company right away.
Lots of people
Moving.
don't want to do 1 or 2. That's the thing. You were a hot shot. You went to a great school. You maybe come from a family of musicians. Think that you can bypass that. But
Yeah,
everybody has to
yeah,
do the 1s and the
yeah.
2s.
And a lot of time, yeah, I didn't like that. But the alternative was like continue to put tar on the road and like paint fire hydrants. So that was I was you can do level one work or go back to work at the city. That's always kind of like I'm like, oh well, teaching even this level, it's still paid better than that and is maybe more fun. So I'll keep doing that. Yeah, and that's where I started sharing these about the workshops, and I had some of my written material. Like I have a couple books on improvisation, and those are the things that connected me with those gigs, like going to Europe and Hawaii. What one was a friend of mine from college who saw the workshops and was like, "Oh, we got to get you out to Hawaii sometime." And then he became the president and CEO of the Youth Symphony and said, "Hey, we're expanding our summer program. Come on down." So it was just like staying in touch with someone, but then also taking, as you had said, about showing up and being helpful and all of those things, but it's really amplified by having like a unique thing that I do that's sometimes remarkable on a good day, and people see it and go, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And I have a platform to like, here's the unique or like person, here's the music that I play, and then here's the kind of workshops that I do, and then I can tie that into the network of like relationship development thing with people that I can authentically talk about those projects, and then sometimes it turns into, oh yeah, we need to have you do that at our school, and turns into another
Yep.
guest artist thing. So
And
yeah,
let me
oh,
stop you
yeah,
real quick because
sure.
there's so much stuff that you have talked about, and
Yeah,
anybody who's listening, one of the things we talk about a lot is creating a flywheel. And what that
mm,
flywheel
yeah,
is that difficult thing to get pushing. And your flywheel is a combination of human connection,
yeah,
of willingness to show up and be helpful, of willing to do anything to get started, right? Taking what you can
yeah,
get. So that flywheel starts going nice and slowly. And then you start to see these kind of green shoots where your name gets recommended. You get some really hot students. And then
yeah,
the next thing you know, you're finding yourself in a situation where you're teaching a class. And from that springs out some books, some workshops. Those books connect you to more people and get your name out more. And so now the flywheel is rolling. Students just
right.
show up. People from 20 years ago are still sending you students. You're known all around. And the whole point of like having you on today is to, hopefully for a musician of any type to say, oh my gosh, if you're willing to do this long term and you're willing to show up and you're willing to connect with people and you're willing to be purposeful, and if you're willing to apply a business sensibility to it, because that was the thing that
Mm,
kind of really broke you open is when you started thinking, oh, wait, what is the thing that I do really uniquely? What is a problem that I solve? When
mm,
you apply that over top, then the flywheel gets faster. And then you get to this point because you don't just show up and have it be how you're feeling and be like, I'm going skiing today and playing golf and doing a Damon
Yeah.
Gerardo record. It takes time, but it really is something that once you get it running, it's actually much easier over time. And you said something else that was really great. You don't do things you don't want to do. That you're like, I don't like to do this. I'll farm that out. I'll automate it. That's not my
Yeah.
thing. All the things that you do are things that you're generally interested in at this
Yeah.
point. Maybe they weren't always, but that is a goal for a business owner. No one owes you or no one owns you. You set your time. You can ditch the duds. You can work with whoever you want to.
Yeah.
You choose your projects. And it actually, once you get around that area, I guess my question is, what what's next for you? Like where you are right now, because I haven't talked to you for a while. You're in this
Yeah.
really great spot. You seem really content. You have very interesting stuff coming in.
Hmm.
What do you see for your next moment? Right? Like this is something I talk to my friends with a lot about, is almost everyone I know, not even just musicians, but people who are super engaged in their lives and really interested and continually just trying to connect more and help more. Like retiring is not something that's like front of mind as much as just transitioning into how can I do cooler stuff? How can
Hmm.
I do more interesting stuff or more mellow stuff or more stuff in tropical places or
Yeah.
see more of the world and take my
Absolutely.
family and see them there? Because and that's it seems like that's kind of what you're doing now is doing these things that you're like, yeah, I'm taking my family to Europe with this
Hmm.
gig. That's really cool. So what do you see as your next
Yeah.
big thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, some projects I have coming up, it's like more recordings. I'm actually doing a solo saxophone record, recording at Fremont Abbey
Beautiful.
with Lacey Brown and Damien. They've got their recording company now, and they've got a hookup on the space, and so it's just
I taught in
doing.
that building for a long time,
Yeah,
by the way.
it's
Yeah.
amazing. But then with some friends like that, able to do some various trades sometimes too. It's like, hey, I'll record on a bunch of this, and you record with this. It's super cool. And then yeah, I have a lead possibly going yeah, some gigs in Tokyo next year. So there's like the travel, like getting to travel to new places is super exciting. But I'm also, developing, just like enjoying the day to day. Sometimes it would be tough when I'd have some of these really cool gigs and then come down and just crash and just not really enjoying the ordinary stuff is more. So it's really about, if you're not grateful for what you have now, you're never going to be satisfied when you get the boat or whatever thing you think you need. So yeah, there's this concept, kind of this concept in the Zen arts, this paradox around goal and no goal. At some point, because I really like doing things that put me in the zone and in flow, kind of a flow junkie. That's how I get projects done. Something where I can just hyper focus on it for hours and build a life around that. It's enjoyable just doing it. So there's the no goal of like, this is the autotelic experience. The goal, like the satisfaction is just in doing the thing, not in like, oh, I want to get paid later or I'm going to get some result. It's the actual doing it, which many of us find in our hobbies too, or it's just doing it in and of itself. And then also there's no ultimate goal, because if we're on this path to mastery, you die before you achieve like full mastery. So there's not a goal, but then the pair between that and actually having the goals that crop up and having the aspiration to like improve our skills to become on this path of mastery. So there are these goals and opportunities, but there's also no goal at the same time. Um,
Are you
this
able
is
to
when I
hold on
think,
to that pretty well? Like it's like where as a in your day-to-day life, I'm really interested. What you're
yeah,
describing is to be mindful and to be present
yeah.
and grateful for where you are. Super good practice. But do you ever feel resentment towards music in any way? Like, was there anything that music didn't give you? Or do you feel, because you always seem so positive about your projects. I'm
Oh,
always like,
yeah. Oh,
do you ever get pissed?
yeah. I mean, you kind of, when I met you, is when kind of like pretty much after that, like big inflection point with like reorienting my things. And that was like
Okay.
a good way to go forward. No, it's tough not being happy with, or just getting too much personal attachment to how I sound that particular day. If I'm not balanced artistically or something like mental health challenges with anxiety or ADHD. Yeah. When like my head's all like spinning around or like stuff, then it's not clear to like think like this. There's no freedom in life without freedom of mind. Figuring out what it takes to like get into a good place, get your head on right. Then it like clears some things,
I, you know,
clears some things up.
I'm glad we brought that up as we're kind of wrapping up this convo
Yeah.
because I think it's really important to also say that to go on this journey, there's so much failure. There is
Yeah.
so, and you have to be okay. You didn't get that gig that you wanted at first, and it turned into other things. Like it happens and students leave and money things come up, or you get a bad review, like you just said. If you're being free of mind and free of spirit and how you're approaching your life, it is a difficult path in certain ways to build, because if you just have a job, that's all applied for you. You just
Hmm.
show up and you do it, and
We got to put, yeah, you're vulnerable, putting yourself out there, and
you
that Roosevelt quote about being in the arena,
and
and
especially if you're trying to be
hmm
remarkable. I heard this really great thing the last couple weeks that stuck with me. In becoming remarkable, you have to be willing to be cringy. That's like the new words. Like everything our
yeah,
kids do, they're like, "Oh, dad, cringe."
yeah, yeah,
But that's how we get there, is by be willing to doing whatever comes up as a creative spark or
sure.
concept. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Sure. Yes. Yes. And Seth Godin says, pushing against, changing the status quo. That's always his thing. Finding a way to change or do something a little bit different. And yeah, some people will who just want things to be exactly as it is, or a little bit threatened by some of the more like creative things I'll do with classical musicians. And uh yeah, there's definitely tough time and figuring that out, like who you want to take advice from. If you're looking, yeah, I mean, ways to get self-tangled in your head, looking at every comment, or if worrying about what everyone thinks, it's going to be relevant for there's a certain type of people that are going to resonate. When I said doing something that resonates deeply with some people, and like a lot of people aren't going to get it, um, and that's fine. So if someone doesn't like my music, or I'm not really a jazz fan, I'm like, well, I don't. That's fine. Most people aren't. Like it doesn't hurt my feelings.
There are
Times of
periods when it
times of like
did.
yeah
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, times of like insecurity and not being happy with my music, and I'll say, oh yeah, there's been like all kinds of tough challenges where I really considered just closing shop, and I set it up in a way I'm like, yeah, not sure what else I was going to do, and kind of
Yeah. Because it is who
push
you
through,
are.
push through some tough times. Yeah,
Well,
and
Steve, this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. And I hope we
mm,
can I know people are going to hear this, and I'm hoping to have you on again as much as you'd like to talk about these kind
okay,
of things, because it's so helpful. And I
yeah,
feel like, especially young musicians, they don't really get this type of feedback. They have the pedestals they look at of a few artists, and they read their
hmm
books or whatever, but they don't generally have this like real world experience. So I'm so grateful that you showed up and we got
hmm
to jam on a little bit and you shared all this, because it was super helpful. I can't wait to go back through. I'm going to make sure to share all those links of the 5,000 things that you recommended. And
yeah,
I think I even have some of your materials from different things you've done before. So I'll be sure to get those from you before we release this. And I don't know if there's any final words you want to say, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today.
yeah. But yeah, for those of you that are, yeah, just starting out, yeah, it's very much about like really committing to the stuff that you find most, artistically, musically most fulfilling. I bring my better self to my teaching when I'm like like learning. I'm like I'm a student, or I'm excited about a project, keeping that going, and then yeah, on the network, finding interesting people, and deliberately expand your networks. Like, oh, this person's doing cool things. This is someone I want to be around more, so I'm going to start going to their concerts, and just being, yeah, curious about other people without just trying to like, oh, how can I get this person to book me a gig? Sometimes you have to do things directly like that, but
That's
yeah,
right.
building the whole ecosystem. And
Yep.
then what did you say? It lays down, throws up shoots. How does that what was
Oh,
that
just
analogy
green
used?
shoots.
Yeah.
Like when you find things that start to work, you lean into them and you find what works for you, and maybe new paths that open. So I feel like we just laid out a nice couple semesters of business 101 here for someone trying
Yeah.
to get their feet going as a
Yeah.
musician, finding their path. So anyway, Steve, thank you so much for being here. This
Oh
was
yeah, you
an
bet.
amazing chat. Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.